Welcome to the Get Real Podcast, your high-octane boost of full-on reality therapy for personal, business, and investing success with your host, Ron Phillips, because somebody's got to tell it like it is.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Get Real Podcast. Ron Phillips here, and I wanted to, let's talk about something today because I think this is something that's come up recently. I guess it potentially could be political, but we're going to just keep it real estate related for this video. And that is all of these potential changes to mortgages to help with affordability. Now, you guys all know that I have discussed the affordability crisis, and it is a problem. There's no way around it. Less people can afford properties. There's less properties on the market. There's a supply challenge. I firmly believe we're going to have a labor shortage in that particular field. The trades, people are aging out of the trades, and there's not enough young people who are going into the trades. So how do we solve it? Well, there've been some ideas floating around, and I wanted to chat through the pros and cons of those particular solutions, I guess. So the first one is we do a 40 or a 50-year mortgage. Now, 40-year mortgages for investment properties have been around for a little while. And the way that they work currently is you do the first 10 years interest only, and then you have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. It's a 40-year fixed rate mortgage with 10 years interest only and 30 years fixed. Now, personally, I think that's a better solution than the 50-year mortgage. Well, let's talk through the 50-year mortgage and what the difference is between a 50-year mortgage and a 30-year mortgage. So the first difference is that it's less expensive. So a $500,000 mortgage at 6% interest rate on a 30-year loan is roughly $3,000. I'm going to round all of these off. I realize I'll be off a little bit. You can do your own calculations if you want. Get your mortgage calculator out, put $500,000 in there at 6% for a 30-year term. You're going to get roughly just under $3,000 a month. Okay. So what happens when we extend this 20 years? 20 years. Now, it's a long time. It's almost 2 times what the original mortgage would be, 30 years. All right. Some people don't even live that long. It's an insane amount of time. But let's go through the numbers. A 50-year mortgage, 6% interest, $500,000 is about $2,600. So it's $2,600 and some change. Okay, so between $300 and $400 difference a month. Now, is that a substantial difference? I would say yes, it is a substantial difference. It's enough of a difference to move plenty of people, millions of people back into the market where they could actually afford to buy a home. So on one hand, it solves, quote unquote, it helps to solve the problem. On the other hand, it has some drawbacks, not the least of which is on a 30-year mortgage, in your first 10 years, you would pay down the principal somewhere north of $10,000 off of your mortgage, okay? Which is not a ton of money. It really isn't. But the difference between that mortgage and the 50-year mortgage is over $10,000 versus like $2,800 of principal. So you're paying all of that money, $3,000 on the 10-year and $2,600 a month on the 50-year, and you're getting $10,000, basically $1,000 a year, although it doesn't work like that, right? It's front-loaded. You don't really start making crazy gains on principal until well past 10 years. And on the 50, it's even further than that. So you got to ask yourself, well, is it better than renting? And the answer to that question is, well, yes. So long as you buy that property when the market is going up in value for those 10 years, or for at least part of those 10 years, then yes, because you're gaining equity in the property from appreciation, in spite of the fact that you're really not gaining it very much of it at all, not even enough to pay a realtor, from equity buy down. In other words, principal reduction. So I'm not a fan of the 50-year mortgage, because there's another problem with the 50-year mortgage. And that is that if you unleash millions more people into the market, then the prices are going to go up because we don't have enough supply. And then we're going to be right back where we started, except for we're going to have a whole bunch of people indebted for 50 years. I don't know, everybody's going to say, yeah, but Ron, nobody stays in their house for 50 years. So it's really not even relevant because they're going to sell out of it anyway. Okay, yeah, maybe, but it depends on what the market's doing. And while they're in it, they're really not gaining anything. If the market is flat or if the market is going down, they're not gaining anything. And so I'm not a huge fan of them. I actually think that some kind of a hybrid, like they've done for investment properties, where you have an interest-only period where you could pay principal if you want to, but you have a payment that's more affordable, which would allow you to build equity as properties increase, or at least be able to really afford your payment. Because the difference in a 6% $500,000 interest-only payment and the 50-year is like $100. Right? It's almost an interest-only product anyway, because there's so much being paid to interest. So my suggestion would be to do something like what they've done for investment properties, where you have a hybrid, where the first 10 years you have an interest only, but you have a fixed rate mortgage so that you're not chasing around the interest rate. You can pay principal down if you want to during those 10 years, but you don't have to, which gives you flexibility on your payment so that you can afford it. And at some point, in this case, it would be 10 years, but it could be something different than that. It turns into a fully amortized loan where you are forced to start making some principal payments. And I like that much better because there's a whole lot more flexibility. I don't think that the mortgages are the only solution that there is out there to help with this challenge. I think there's a lot of other solutions. We've talked about some of them on the show where, the government really needs to get out of the way of the building process. If they want to be involved, heavily involved like they are now, then they need to change and become a positive force for builders instead of a negative force. It is almost impossible to build entry-level homes that are affordable, and largely due to how expensive the process is to create buildable lots. And then, of course, on top of that, all the regulation that goes into the construction, right? So the governments could, if they wanted to, help the industry. Right now, that's not what's happening. Right now, they are a hindrance to the building and the construction process in almost all major cities. And so they're causing expense where they could be eliminating it, and they could be simplifying the process. The government, for sure, is a major factor in why housing is too expensive. Now, the other thing is they created inflation that inflated the commodities, they inflated the building pieces and the land and everything associated with building a property. So those two things they officially own. Mortgages weren't really the problem. Interest rate really isn't the problem. When you inflate the prices of everything involved in building a property, and then you create policies that make it so that we can't have enough, you get what you get. And I guess what I'm saying to all of you is, be really, really cognizant of who it is you're voting for and what their policies are. Not just the talking points, but really what is it they're going to do. And I'm speaking specifically local and regional. Local, state, they're way more important than federal when it comes to these kind of issues. So make sure you understand what these people want to enact that you're voting in. And then you get what you get. If you vote them in, can't really complain about what it is that happens after the fact. I would suggest strongly not voting party line. I would actually really look into the candidates and try to figure out if they have your best interest in heart, if they're actually going to do things that solve problems. And primarily, government solves problems by getting out of the way and not over-regulating things. So I'll get off my political soapbox now. But 50-year mortgages, I don't think are a really good solution. I really don't. It's not going to solve the problem. If anything, they may make it worse. And on that happy note, get out there and make something happen.
This has been the Get Real Podcast. To subscribe and for more information, including a list of all episodes, go to getrealestatesuccess.com.